Hello and welcome to the Enquiry Podcast. My name is Nerida Mills. I am your host, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you along for this episode. What we do in the Enquiry Podcast is really explore and inquire with experts in their field in regards to what it is that actually creates a human experience, and more importantly, what it is that we can use to influence the human experience for our own development, growth, and expansion. So welcome along. Let's dive in, and I hope you enjoy. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Enquiry Podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to have with us today Disa Godson. Have I said your name right?
You have? Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. I met Disa, nearly a month ago now, I think.
Mm.
Um, she was helping to facilitate a process that I was part of. And my curiosity really was piqued with you because you're doing some amazing things. You've been on an incredible journey, and I think that you've just got so much gold to share. So, of course, I invited her onto the podcast. So, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Nerida. Fantastic to be here.
Yeah. So, would you like to just tell us a little bit about your background, whatever feels relevant for you?
Sure, of course. So my background is a various amount of things, to be honest, but my absolute dream and goal, which I was able to achieve from the young age of 12, I wanted to be a teacher. So that's where I went and was absolutely determined, no matter what got in the way of being a teacher. So as soon as I left school, I studied teaching and went off and embarked on that career for probably about 15 years. So since that, I was tapped on the shoulder to join a family organisation actually in civil infrastructure and worked nationally in a learning development, which evolved into mental health, wellbeing, people, culture role for 8 years, and decided that I needed to be true to my authenticity after studying psychology during that time. So I embarked on a wellbeing career, which has been my last nearly 6 years. And really, I probably have been doing a lot of that work in a lot of the spaces I was in, particularly in leadership in civil infrastructure company. So wellbeing is become a real passion of mine to ensure that we look after first of all, our health and wellbeing, probably because of a personal challenge and journey that I've had. So that's pretty much the nutshell of where I've got to right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, is that enough for
Yeah, totally.
anything to start with?
Yeah. Are you happy to speak into the personal journey? So why the shift into the well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that really hit me in the face, Nerida, was my health at a point, probably, well, we're hitting 5 years now, post cancer scare, trauma, tumor in my pancreas. Had a very rare insulinoma, which I don't know where it's come from. I don't know really how they happen, but a neuroendocrine tumor that developed in just outside of my pancreas, or just the tubes connecting, the duodenum connecting to my pancreas on the outside of my pancreas. And pretty fearful that that not was a healthy tumor that was causing some really big issues around my hypoglycemia, and thinking initially that I had diabetes. But it was about a 3-year journey to actually discover that tumor and to see that obviously it then impacted my function to the point where I couldn't drive. They wouldn't let me drive. I could barely go to work, do some work at home, but some days I was just so unpredictable. My blood sugars were down around 3. They should be up around 5 and 6. And they knew something wasn't right. So 3 emergency trips within a month. They said, right, this is something we have to investigate. So we found the beautiful tumor. I say beautiful because have had the gift of it having been removed safely with no massive trauma to my body, other than keyhole, which wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to have an open Whipple's procedure and everything to remove half my stomach, half my pancreas, and all those little exciting change of life things, I suppose. But for me, it was enough of a change of life to hit me in the face and go, right, I need to do something for myself to change myself and my own health and well-being, but also to look at what was causing that, because I do believe I did cause that in the lifestyle I was living. And then that really took me on that trajectory, particularly after studying psychology. I knew that there was a brain-body, mind-body connection, all those sorts of things that could really impact on my success. So
Awesome.
yeah.
What did you learn?
What did I learn? I think the key things that I learned through that journey was vulnerability. I
Mm.
was probably a perfectionist, loved having control. And when I could not no longer have control over my body, therefore affected my mind and the way that I could operate and function, that was probably one of my biggest learnings, is to surrender sometimes and accept that there are other people that can support you. And Disa, let that happen. Um, I suppose at that time, and probably 20 years leading into that, I was very much the leader of our family, the leader of the financial situation of our goals and those sorts of things, but also travel and social and everything. So it was a lot, I think, to recognize that I could no longer lead myself in those really tough moments. So that was one of the biggest learnings, was to surrender, accept, and release control and let other people in on that space. So vulnerability was one of my key learning points. And I have continued to lean into vulnerability no matter how hard that is at times. Yeah, and the other learning was that it is me creating this life, and it is me really ultimately, and it's my life that I've been gifted. What am I going to do with it? So to actually really, understand that if I'm going to create a different life or a different outcome in the future, what am I going to do about that?
Fantastic. I love to ask, what do you learn? Because I feel like if we look at the body-mind connection, the body will often push us, not so gracefully most of the time, into the learning that we are required for in that moment of time for the fullness of the expression of our soul. So it's so fascinating to me to hear those learning pieces. And also that your surgery went way better than what was expected based on the application of those learnings, right? At least partly. So it's really, really interesting. Now, obviously, you've got this beautiful passion of well-being as a result of that. I'm sure you've made quite substantial life changes as a result of that. And I guess I'm kind of curious as to your focus now. So, where is your focus now in the application of that well-being, and why?
Yeah, really interesting. So I think the biggest application for me is understanding that our health and well-being just impacts so many other aspects of our life, and how we can actually make those connections. So for me, I get to work individually with clients as well as in groups, either through education and facilitation or through workshopping ideas and concepts that actually come from our health and well-being that impact other areas of either our workplace interactions, our communication, our relationships, our success overall and in general. So one of my biggest passion pieces really has been in the last probably 10 years is connecting health and well-being, mental health initially, to performance and success, whether that be in life, whether that be in an organizational sense, whether that be just any way that we approach what we want to create, and even how we go about goals and achieving those goals. So yeah, I think having that really big slap in the face to go, actually, you've got no control over your goals right now, that I'm going to have to get other interventions to actually help me out here, was one of those big things. And I think there's a level of support that I like to draw on to show people, to say that we don't have to do this alone. We don't have to look after our health and well-being and our success in life, no matter what success looks like for you, alone. There is people that can support you. There are people that can support you, but also there are tools and strategies that can really support you. And some tools that works now may not work in the future, or what's worked in the past may not be working in the future.
Distinction. Yeah, I love that. And so, curious, when you talk about goals, where do you feel like most people go wrong in goals in regards to their well-being?
Yeah, really interesting. I think one of the biggest things that I hear and see is two things. One is that letting the mind rule and our mindset that we lose control or lose consciousness of, that can really impact our well-being and therefore successful creation of where we're heading. If we are not aware of, or I think it really ties back to even emotional intelligence around that, and what we're willing to look at around what emotions drive those outcomes, how we're willing to learn to regulate, have emotional awareness, social intelligence around, what that looks like to actually create that outcome. So I think our mind, absolutely, and our connection to our body, so that even self-awareness and not listening to that. I mean, if there's one other thing I learned there, is to listen to my body. It was telling me so many things that if we're not going to listen to that vehicle that is driving us to create what it is we want in life, then we're not actually, it's like not fueling the car. So yeah, really looking at what that means from a wellbeing point of view. So that could mean even our itty bitty shitty committee that can get in the way in our mind, and letting that rule, and letting it, giving it all the positions of power to take over. And then if therefore those excuses, I'm going to say excuses, but even procrastination, overwhelm, all those elements kick in.
I think it's so important, and obviously it's becoming more and more accepted, the connection between a person's well-being and their capacity to perform. And you're working with some pretty big companies in regards to this. What's the drive or the passion for specifically like the corporate intervention here for you?
Yeah, I just think there's a amazing amount of group connection and learning from each other that I see, which is why I took psychology study and learning in a more holistic wellbeing sense rather than clinically one-on-one. I felt like there was a bigger place for me. I love working in groups and seeing the dynamics fit and work to get meshed together. And the fact that one person's strategy may work for them, and it may be a shared practice that can help and support somebody else without even any words, being interactive between those two people. But by sitting in the one room and listening and sharing stories and understanding the narrative and where we come from, can have a really big impact on others. So I think that group think mentality that kicks in, but also the learning and peer support that we can generate in group contexts. Yeah.
Have you heard of family constellations?
I have. I don't know a lot about it. Yeah.
Interesting. Just in regards to like that group work piece, it's one of the things that I find fascinating. So family constellations is basically based on the premise that we always have the same dynamics playing out from that initial childhood family dynamic, right? So there'll always be someone in your life that represents the mum or the dad or the sister or the brother or whatever. And so within spaces of groups, be that, like I could even, looking back at the places that I've worked over time, I can be like, oh, that person was my dad, that person was my mum, there's my brother, there's my sister, and then utilizing the group as an access point into the dynamic that continues to play out from those root relationships as a pathway of healing that dynamic and reverse engineering it back. It's very fascinating.
Love that. I'm going to have to write that one down and dive into that even further.
I thought you might have.
I have heard another professional speak about that not that long ago, actually. So yeah, love it.
It's coming into your awareness a couple of times,
I know,
isn't it?
Absolutely. Love that we get to learn from each other. It's awesome.
Definitely. So, I mean, we've spoken a bit about your professional world. For you moving forward as an individual human being, what have you taken forward?
Oh, holistically, so many things. Look, I think one of the things I recognize is that I probably didn't manage stress very well in life. I know that a part of, one of the things I talk to people about well-being is not about removing stress. It's about looking at stress exists in our life for a reason. It can sometimes protect us. It's something we can leverage from. It sometimes, drives stronger outcomes. It's navigating and knowing what optimal stress looks like and knowing what our indicators are into when I am too stressed. Yeah. Now that can be from the start of one day to the end of another day, it doesn't mean that it's over time. It can just be within that one day. So what I recognize now is I name it to tame it, I suppose. And I look at what emotions are attached to that and what am I giving it and where do I need to put it and how do I need to shape that to actually use that stress for a purpose or to mitigate the risk of that stress if I don't manage it. So, so it's really looking at how do I identify it first and foremost. Because a lot of people, I think the other thing is that I was probably using the word I'm so stressed constantly and knowing the linguistic and the attachment to language of what our emotions can feed and give and what we're putting out there, I suppose, in our thoughts and resulting in our actions, is that I was giving stress a lot of energy and probably below the line thinking and blaming others for that stress rather than me taking that internal look and intrinsically looking at what I could focus on. So stress management is probably, I don't like to call it stress management. I like to call it how do I look after myself, I suppose. And I suppose I actually used to think that self-care was quite fluffy, and that going for a massage, that wasn't going to help my stress because I was going to come back to the same thing. So until I really understood what self-care looked like for the mind and body and the investment that I make in that, that's probably what I have really taken forward. And not to say that I'm perfect. I'm absolutely human and I've got a strong sense of the human experience in that I'm never going to be perfect at that. I'm only going to do the best I can in those moments that I can pull myself and actually become aware of those things. So without it getting away from me. And I think I before just didn't know how to navigate and manage that. So very much brought a lot of tools and focus and awareness around what I can do in that space to support myself and obviously supporting others in that way as well.
It's an interesting one because I know like before I got sick, I identified as quite stressed for a period of time, and then I completely rejected the idea that I was stressed for a period of time, even though nothing had changed in my nervous system. But both of those states kind of, I'm a driven person, so I like to achieve what I'm going after, and I have a very big drive to see what I'm capable of, and I have a deep curiosity that also leads me down rabbit holes that I probably wasn't expecting. And so there's all of these contributing factors. And then similar to you, I guess, in the process of my own healing journey, obviously different expression of it, but the process of my own healing journey was a recalibration of my relationship to that. And, part of that was that I had to become a sloth for a period of time.
Interesting. Yes, it's interesting that
and just do absolutely nothing and try not to go insane in the process. But then since getting my energy back and everything, that drive is still there. It's not like that's gone anywhere. It seems to be an innate part of who I am as an individual. But it is that relationship to the expression of the agitation that is created in the expansion. I call it my nervous system support now. It's like how much can my nervous system hold in a balanced state, and where are my edges around that? And then that kind of it's interesting. It seems to be a very consistent journey for people to go in, high achievers particularly. It's sort of like, relationship with stress needs to be readdressed in order for us to actually be able to do what we're capable of.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, I do a lot of work with people around their values and the strength-based approach to wellbeing. And when I look at one of my strongest values is growth and development. And the strength that drives that is a love of learning. So, when I'm like yourself, it's that need to be able to want to be achieving and diving into your curiosity being up there as well, diving into exploring topics and understanding that further to be able to feel like I have either a good sense of knowledge to be able to even deliver share that information, but also what does it mean for me? And so therefore there is I suppose a balls in the air juggling approach to time and energy and where we spend that. And sometimes it's okay to put the pencils down and just to go, okay,
Oh,
I
absolutely.
don't need to be driving with that values approach, or with that strong value or that strong energy to be able to want to learn more.
Yeah.
Where can I just put the pencils and books down for a while and just
Yeah.
sit with
I'm
that?
I have to say I'm much better at my boundaries around that now. Past I used to
Same.
be like, oh, no, I should still be hustling. Like, if do you really want it if you're not hustling all the fucking time? And now I'm like, it's 5 o'clock and I'm done,
Yes.
outside of training deliveries. But when it's time off, it's time off. And I have cultivated boundaries with my devices by putting blocks on things. Just don't even want a notification at that point in
No.
time, like just total decompress.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some of the strategies, I guess, or practices for you in your life that has helped to build a new type of relationship with stress, or to be able to
Yeah.
expand your capacity for it?
Yeah, look, I think one of those things was being able to reach out for support and being okay with that. That was
Mm.
one of the things that I had to do. And I suppose for me, it was actually looking at the quality of that support. I feel like I had
Good
a lot of
distinction.
people, sorry.
Good distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a lot of people around me. And since that time, I've actually let three people go in my life that I soon realized were actually not supportive of who I wanted to be and who my authentic self was,
Mm.
because I think I was probably masking to be able to keep those people in my life. Uh, and that's, as much as that was a grieving loss process as well, it certainly has supported me and kept me grounded in my authentic self so much more. Um, I think really understanding the importance of self-compassion was one of those things where, knowing that I'm human and this is a part of, life, that I go through challenges and that other people have experienced this too. So I'm not alone. But to also have some mindfulness and presence about that and what it means to be to kind to self, to
Mm.
actually forgive myself when I haven't managed stress well, or I haven't been able to um, maintain healthy relationships through managing stress, or those sorts of things. It's I did the best I could with the knowledge I had, and or with the energy I had, or with the time I had,
Yeah.
and being okay with that. So self-compassion to self has probably been one of my biggest. And then I think that's also supported me in having compassion for others, to actually hold the space for others and to know that, yeah, it is tough and that we can support each other. I'm willing to walk beside you while you take the action to feel more empowered around that.
Mm.
um, is probably two of the things. Yeah, leaning into and reaching out for support, but also getting quite clear on what that could look like. Someone said, what can I do to help you? I don't need any help, but support, like if you could, just sit and listen to my crap for 10 minutes, I'd really just appreciate that, like just let me
Absolutely.
vent for a minute. Can you, or can you just, come around and just be with me while I cook a meal? I don't want you to cook one for me, but could you just, come and cook a meal with me, just to have that company. And I think understanding that rather than saying no outrightly, but really tapping into what it could look like has certainly been helpful or useful for me. Yeah.
I love that. And the piece around authenticity over connections, no matter how strong, I
Mm,
think is so important. Like you even said it in your language, it helped you stay grounded in your authenticity. And
totally.
when we're grounded, we are less stressed, right? We're less in the head, we're into the
Uh,
body, we're present in mind,
yeah.
So there's just so many benefits to it. But of course, it's so against human nature, right?
Yeah,
We want to keep those connections going at all cost, and unfortunately, the cost is often ourselves.
absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely. And I think there's a point where you go, how much can I possibly invest in this relationship any further where it's the detriment of me? Um, I think without calling that and putting that very strong, clear boundary around that, it's certainly nothing's going to change until we have that influence. Really, we can't expect others to change
Mm.
thinking that could make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I came to is that other people don't need to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
That,
The acceptance that they are who they are, and that is okay.
yeah, if I'm perfect as I am, so are they, right? So
Yeah,
it's not a matter of anybody being right or wrong, but it's just does this connection continue to align with our authentic expression? And if it doesn't, then, can I let that go?
yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, so much easier said than done, right?
So much easier said than done. And I know, Nerida, you touched on this with boundaries. I mean, a lot of the work I do with clients is around how do we possibly set some healthy boundaries for ourselves, and I continue to learn in that space for myself, with different people and different areas of life that I work in. However, I certainly feel like that has been one of the biggest tools I've worked on over the last 10 years to actually shape what boundaries sound and feel like and look like, because there are so many different ways that can be shared. And just to get clear on where that comes from. So when we are setting boundaries, how do we know how we need to set a boundary, and what's the responses we could expect, and what are the reactions we could expect, I should say.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for us? So yeah, and I think it's that meaning and purpose and authentic life is where I constantly keep anchoring to.
Yeah.
Help
One of the
people.
things that I love about boundaries, I talk about boundaries a lot, boundaries with self and boundaries with others, and not just in behavior, but in expression.
Oh,
And
totally.
it's I find it interesting because boundaries are one of those things that you don't actually know where they live until you hit it.
Mm.
And sometimes people can have the tendency to hit a boundary and then beat themselves up senselessly because they've hit a boundary. It's like, no, no,
Yeah.
no. There's literally no other way of you to know
Yeah.
that the boundary exists until you hit it. Like, let's fucking celebrate that, and
Yeah.
actually get excited. Okay, well, now I know. So, right. So it's not
Mhm.
about being wrong. It's just about recognizing truth when you see it or feel it in yourself
Yeah.
and honoring that.
And knowing that those emotions that come up through that process are data, it's information,
Yes, love
it's
that.
it's pieces of it's golden nuggets that we can use. So, really using that data as a way of, well, what do I need to do here? Or what can I no longer do?
Yeah.
And I like to think of boundaries particularly around a mindful yes and a protective no. So, and I anchor to some of the work I really love in Dr. Rebecca Ray. She's a wonderful psychologist from Maleny, actually, over here in Queensland. I really love how she talks about this, mindful yes and protective no, with saying that it's not forever. Mindfully I say yes because I've thought about the impact if I don't, do it. I feel like I will miss out and I'll get benefit from that. If I say no, it doesn't mean forever as well. It could be just for now. It could be for the next 2 weeks while I reset, while I sloth, while I do whatever I need to do to get back to my best version of self. And then do you mind if I tap back in then?
Yeah. I like that flexibility.
Yeah. It
It's
doesn't
really
always have to be a no forever. And I think
yeah. It brings in a
that's
softness, doesn't it? It's,
yeah.
like I think I know that part of why I had the experience that I had with my health was because I was meeting life in a really hard way. There was a lot of fundamentalist kind of expression going on. It had to be a certain way. There was very, very strong lines in the sand. And I remember even a couple of years before it got to the worst point, but it was still like intense at the time. Um, so I would have been, goodness, maybe like 35, 36 at this stage. And for the first time, I actually found a postcard that said, embrace your contradictions. And for the first time in my life, I was just like, holy crap, that is actually what it's about, is embracing our contradictions. Because before then, I was like, well, if I see myself under this hat, then I have to be under that hat completely, right? All parts of self need to align with that sense of identity. And if there's anything that's outside of that sense of identity, then I'm inauthentic, or that I'm, fake, or that I'm not back in whatever. I had lots of stories around this. And just that, embracing your contradictions was the first step for me in the pathway of really opening up to a softening of expression and a softening of experience as a reflection point to that expression. It's really, so I really love that
Yeah.
because it brings it home in a really simple way.
Yeah, and I think often people see boundaries as such rules, and that fundamental line in the sand.
Mm.
Whereas I think, yes, sometimes there has to be, particularly around relationships. There's that
Yeah.
line in the sand that I need to draw here.
Yeah.
Um, and I've done that around communication with a person. I'm sorry, I can no longer be connected with you. I'm going to have to block you because this communication's not healthy for me. Being that line in the sand. Now, that line in the sand at the moment doesn't mean it has to be there forever, particularly if it's a family member or something like that, where we will see them again, or we will have contact with them, or a past partner that's a parent to the children, or, it's that how can we possibly at one point bring that down to be, now it could be a mindful, yes, I am open to communication.
Mm.
However, I might have some stipulations around what that looks like,
Yeah.
because I want to look after me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Respectful communication.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, absolutely.
Super important.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing so openly and vulnerably with us all. It's really fascinating to hear your take on everything and your experience. And I think that there's a lot of gold in this conversation for a lot of people.
Awesome.
I'd love to end out with a question that I like to ask everybody, which is that, in order to take on a leadership role, obviously, as we step into the limelight, what we are exposed to is the projections and judgments of others people, which is often what holds people back from taking that step or taking that leap. And I think that as we're moving forward through the timeline of humanity, and more and more people are stepping up because people are taking the power back from large authority pieces. We really do need, or it's inevitable anyway, more and more people are taking that leap. And I think more and more people are seeking a pathway that feels aligned with them to be able to do that. So in order for you to step into being seen in a greater capacity, what was the journey for you, or what was the lesson for you that you had to get in order to let go of that fear around being seen?
Interesting. Okay. So again, I think it's grounding to authenticity would have to be one of the biggest things I've done. And that's not been easy because I've had to let go of imposter syndrome. I've had to let go of the fear of judgment, which we all have in survival instinct. I do think that there's also an element on, I think it's that the right people will be beside me and trusting in that journey of the right people that support me, and there's others that won't, and I'm actually okay to accept that. I'm actually okay that there will be people that won't like me, and there will be people that won't want to hear what I have to say, and that's okay. They can turn the volume down, they can switch the channel over, they can listen to a different podcast, or they can listen to a different space. And I think it's recognizing that I'm not everybody's person, and I'm okay with that. I think that has taken me a long time to get to that point where I'm absolutely ready. My journey of full-time self-employment is to embrace all of those things, to know that people won't click on my website, they won't come to my retreats, they won't want to coach with me even when I send them the information and think it's amazing. They won't want to connect with me, and I'm okay with that. And the people that do, they're the people I really anchor with gratitude to, and remain curious and open to the learnings that we get to give each other. I do think as being a leader, I continuously want to learn from people and with people, and having the vulnerability to do that is really important to me. Whereas I think previously being a leader in an organisation is that I certainly felt like I had to do it a certain way. And I've been able to strip that back and know that that's not always the way to lead, and the way I lead I'm really comfortable with. So
Authenticity takes a lot of courage, hey?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially early days. I think once you've settled into it, it's a lot easier, but that that transition period, I guess, from people pleasing or mask wearing into the vulnerable expression of self. That transition period can be edgy.
Yeah.
It requires courage.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. So how do people find out about what you've got going on, Disa?
How do they find about me? So initially, I'm gonna send you a link to my website very shortly, which is just about to launch, as
Exciting.
refreshed and recalibrated to the work that I do. You can follow me on Facebook, Disa Godson, or LinkedIn. I have a mixed representation on there at the moment. Trying to get more time to actually express myself on those platforms. So yeah, that's probably the best way, but I'll certainly send you a link to my website, which has got my updated information on it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again for joining us.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate your time and the work that you're doing in this world. I think it's beautiful, and I think that it's well needed. So right on time.
Well, I'm blessed to connect with you, Nerida, and I look forward to chatting to you more, I'm sure.
Thank you. Okay, that is it from us for today for the Enquiry Podcast. All of the links that you're going to want to find is going to be underneath this episode. So jump along and make sure that you're following the people who do join us for the Enquiry Podcast. I'm sure you'll agree they are absolutely phenomenal, and it is my absolute pleasure to be able to have them come in and share their wisdom with everybody. If you're wanting to know what I'm up to, jump onto my website, neridamills.com, and you can check out all of my opportunities to get involved, be they free things or programs or events. You can always come along and say hi. I would love to see you.